In this video, you'll learn how to automate WordPress using Zapier. I'll also show you through a plugin for WordPress that takes the automation capability with WordPress and Zapier way beyond what you can do with just Zapier out of the box. I'm Jimmy from jimmyrose.me and Content Snare, and if you'd like to learn more cool ways to automate your business, get more time back in your life, and get more productive, please hit that red subscribe button below. Just a couple of quick things before we get started. Number one, this is not a basic Zapier tutorial. If you've never used Zapier before, I'd recommend checking out my Zapier tutorial video, which you will find linked up in the description below, and I'll also be showing on the video as a card. Number two is just to note that Zapier might have changed since I recorded this video. Obviously, user interface has changed, but also functionality may have changed. And in the first part of the video, I'll show you where to go to see if any functionality has changed. And number three is that I'm only going to dig into the main core parts of WordPress. So things like posts and users, not things like WooCommerce. That WooCommerce has their own Zapier integration, which you can check out with the link I'll put in the description below. But yeah, for now, we're just going to stick with WordPress core. So let's go over and have a look. The first place you want to go is the WordPress integrations page on Zapier. Now, I will link this up below, but you can see the URL there. And when you're on this page, you want to scroll all the way down to the bottom, because this is where we can see what kind of workflows we can trigger in Zapier, and then what kind of actions we can actually take in WordPress itself, right? So you can see things here like we can trigger a Zapier workflow to happen when there's a new comment, when a post is updated, when a user's added, whatever. And under actions, we can create a post, update a post. So I'm going to go through a few ideas for all of these. Again, if you have never used Zapier before, please check out my Zapier tutorial, as some of this may go over your head if you don't understand how workflows work. So you can see we've got a new comment trigger here, right? So this means you could start a workflow when a comment is added to your WordPress blog. And from there, you might want to post that in Slack or put it in your task manager to follow up with that comment, for example. New media means when you upload like an image or something to a post, maybe you want to back up every image that is added to your WordPress site. So you might have a workflow that says when a new media is added, add it to my Google Drive or something. New post is probably the most important one that most of you are going to be using. So you could say when a new post is added to my blog, share it on social media, like add it to my buffer to share out on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and wherever else. You could also create your own archive of posts or even like a promotional checklist. So you could say when a blog post goes live, put it in a spreadsheet like this one. So this is for our blog Content Snare. Every single post that goes in gets automatically added to this sheet, and each column here actually becomes a checklist of all the promotional activity we need to do on this post. So that becomes a bit of a task for the marketing team. So, we use a spreadsheet for this. You might want to just add a task to your project management system to start your post publishing work and in promoting that post. And in this one, this is my jimmyrose.me website, and this is just an archive of all of my posts. So I can see when I posted each thing, its URL, categories, that kind of thing. So I just have a quick reference if I ever need to look up an old post without having to go to my site and actually search for it, because I work in Airtable all the time. So new post actually comes in probably the most handy out of all of them. Updated post, not so much. I mean, you might want to keep a record of the last time you updated each post in a table like this in my Airtable. So you could update, you might have another column here that's like date updated. So it just updates that date. And the final one is new users. So maybe when a new user is added to your WordPress, maybe someone's signed up, you might want to add them to your CRM. So that's just some basic workflows there. Let's jump over to actions. Now these are things you can actually do inside WordPress from Zapier. So you might trigger a workflow based on maybe a task being checked off in your project management. So if you're saying you're using Trello, maybe you tick something off, that starts a workflow, and then that actually says create a post in WordPress. You might create a draft ready for a new post to go live. You could also automatically post new YouTube videos. If you've got a channel, you could say when there's a new video posted in a channel, create a post in WordPress, and we'll actually have a little look at that example shortly. And similarly with social media. So you could have something like every time I post on Instagram, automatically upload that to my WordPress as well. So just a couple of random ideas here for you. Now let's jump over and actually look how you can set this up. So I've got a Zap set up here that just says we're going to trigger this workflow whenever there is a new video in my channel in YouTube. Really basic setup here. It's just saying here's the account we're going to trigger on, here's the channel ID. Now this is going to depend on whatever workflow you're doing, so I'm not going to dig into this in too much detail. This is just starting the workflow to say whenever there is a new video on my channel. So now I'm going to go ahead and add an action to post to WordPress. So I'm going to type in WordPress here. And the action we want is to create a new post in WordPress. So select that and continue. Now I've already got a WordPress account set up here for Content Snare, but I'm going to create a new one for my jimmyrose.me website just so I can show you what the process looks like. You'll notice here it says, first thing, it uses the WordPress REST API and the Zapier plugin must be installed and activated on your WordPress site. So there's a link to the plugin here, but you can also just come over to your WordPress install, come down to add new plugin, search for Zapier. I'm sure you've added plugins before and know this process, but this is the one here you're looking for. Just make sure it's installed and activated. You don't need to do any other setup. You just need to make sure it's active. And we'll jump back over here and find that login window. Now, I'd strongly recommend creating a new user just for security reasons. So don't use your standard admin account here. Create a separate admin account that is something like Zapier admin or whatever you want to call it, just so you're not using your main account here. The first thing you want to do is type in your website URL, just like this. So you don't want to put in WP login or any of that, just the main URL here. And then you're going to type in your username and password. Now, thankfully, it looks like that's worked, and there is the new account that we've just connected. If you get errors here, this is the most likely place you're going to get some kind of problem, because some hosts will actually block access to WordPress. You basically need to have what's called XMLRPC enabled on your install, and some hosts block this by default. So here is the platform that I use for hosting called Cloudways, and there's actually a setting here, XMLRPC access, so under application settings for each WordPress install, and this is turned off by default. So I had to come in here and make sure that was enabled. Depending on what host you were using, I would try literally just Googling something like the name of your host and then XMLRPC. So you can see straight away the first result there is how to disable or enable XMLRPC. And this is exactly how I found out how to enable it with Cloudways. And so you go down and you can see it tells you where to go to find the settings and that spot that I just showed you. So some hosts might actually need you to contact support to get it enabled. So depending on your host, it's going to be different. So I'll leave that part up to you. But now let's go ahead and create a post in WordPress. Just going to continue on. And we're going to create just a normal blog post in WordPress. So you can see we've got all the different types of posts here. Now it's worth mentioning here, if you have something like ACF, Advanced Custom Fields, set up in WordPress, you might find that custom fields don't actually show here, which is a bit unfortunate. Maybe things will change in the future, but I have a custom field here on my posts, just called test, that I've set up using ACF just to see how this would work. And unfortunately, it doesn't come through. You can see there, these are all just the standard WordPress fields. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but at least we can create the post. So I'm going to create a standard post with a title that's the exact same as the last title on my YouTube video that came from the trigger above. So this data is coming straight out of the trigger. We've got the title. I just published a new video. And then I'm going to put in the URL there. Just keeping this really basic for an example's sake here. We're just going to use everything else as default. It'll use me as the author, and maybe we want to choose categories, but I might stick it in under automation as a category, and then continue. So if I just jump back over here to see what posts we've currently got live. All right, so that's the last post there. And jump back to Zapier to test. Actually, one thing we should have looked at is what if we're going to publish the post or not, right? So I'm guessing somewhere there's a status, right? So we can either create this as a draft or publish it ready to go. But maybe, I just want to check things over first. So I'm going to make sure that's set up as a draft before I test this out. Have a look at this, and we're going to test and review. It says it was successful. So let's jump over here and reload this. Boom, there we go. We got a new post, how to create custom assistant commands and actions. And you can see it's posted in that information. And see, notice how WordPress is smart enough to embed YouTube URLs by default. So it's actually expanded that out into the video, the last video on my channel. If I publish that now, that would be live on my blog. So that's a really simple example of how to automate posting to WordPress with Zapier. Now let's just have a quick look at the other way around. So if we wanted to trigger a workflow based on when something happens in WordPress. So I'm going to create a new Zap here. And we're going to trigger on WordPress this time. So here, these are all the same events we went through earlier. So we could trigger a workflow, again, based on when a new comment is added to our site. Maybe we want to also post that in our Slack channel or something. But for the most part, you're probably going to be using new post. So we'll trigger that workflow. We'll select that account that I just set up and continue. Maybe we only want to do this on published things. So once a post goes live is the only time we care. So I'm going to go with post status of published and leave it as the posts type of post here. So, if you had different kinds of custom post types set up, so maybe you have like case studies, could be an example. If you have different types of posts set up on your site, they will show up here. Again, I don't believe custom fields are supported here. In fact, let's go over and test that out. So if I jump over to that post that we just created, have a look down here, I've got this test field. So I'm going to put some test data in here as the custom field, publish this post. Now let's jump back over to Zapier and run a test. And you see here, this is all the data that's come back from WordPress. I'm going to search for test and see if anything's come up there. It does not look like it. That test, what did I say? Test data. Yeah, it's definitely not there. So that's a bit of a bummer that custom fields don't come through. But, at least everything else has come through. So we have a new post on our WordPress site. And then maybe we want to share that into Buffer. So I've got Buffer set up here. It's just a social sharing app. If you are not familiar with it already, I'm going to add it to our Buffer, which will automatically post this out at a time, sometime in the future. I can say that I'm going to post this to my Twitter, and you can see all the data comes through here. So we'll say, here's the title. A new post just went live. We could put the title in there, move down a couple of lines and drop in the link. So that would tweet out exactly this, right? So the title of the post and the link would get automatically added in. I'm not going to go ahead and do that just because I don't want to tweet that right now, but that's as simple as it is. So when a new post happens in WordPress, we're going to share this out on social media. So that's pretty much it for integrating WordPress with Zapier with the built-in functionality. You'll notice there that it is fairly limited, especially given that custom fields don't come through, which limit what you can do. But there is a plugin you can use to drastically increase the ability of what you can automate with WordPress in Zapier. So let's jump over and have a look. But just before I show you the plugin, if you are a power user of automation, I just want to show you something quickly. Jump over here to Integromat. Integromat is a Zapier competitor that is capable of a bit more with their WordPress integration. So it actually can work with custom fields, but it does require a lot more to set up. So I've got the help article open here, And you can see there is quite a bit more to do. You have to install a JSON plugin, and if you want it to work with custom fields, you actually have to set up another plugin again, this one here, and then specify which custom fields are actually going to be made available to work with Integromat via the API. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, this could be a little bit too advanced, and I'd just skip on with the video. But for those wanting a more advanced integration than Zapier, go to csnare.com/Integromat. I'll put that link below, and it will be showing on the screen now. This will actually get you a free month of the basic plan of Integromat, so you can start playing around and actually see how this will work for you. But I'm not going to go into any more detail there because this video focuses on Zapier. Just have a look in the description below for any resources on Integromat. But otherwise, let's move on, and I want to show you this awesome plugin called Uncanny Automator. Again, I'll put a link to this in the description below. It's csnare.com/uncanny. And this is a cool little plugin that adds a lot of automation capability to any WordPress install. And I'll just give you some examples here because this goes way beyond just creating posts like we looked at in the previous example. So I'm going to open their integrations page. And you can see here it integrates with a lot of different WordPress plugins. So have a look through this list. You know, for example, if you have a membership site and you have a course with LearnDash, LearnDash is like a learning management system for WordPress. You scroll down here, these are some of the actions you could do from Zapier using this plugin, right? So you could say, you know, when a certain thing happens, like maybe a tag gets added to a contact in my CRM, I want to enroll the user in a course, right? So you can see the power there, you know, so you could enroll people in certain courses in your LearnDash website just by tagging someone in your CRM. And you can see a whole bunch of the other actions you can do there. I'm just going to quickly show you how to set this up. Just quickly note here that see how some of the actions are indicated that they are only available on Pro. With this plugin, the Zapier integration is a Pro integration, so you will need the paid version of this plugin to get the full functionality with Zapier. So head over to csnare.com/automator to grab your copy, but you can get started by going back to your WordPress site to plugins, and you're going to add a new plugin called Uncanny Automator. And this is the one you want here. So even if you get the Pro version, you still need to install this first. And then once you purchase, you'll be able to install the Pro version of Uncanny. And once you've done that, you'll get this option here on the left for Automator. So go ahead, click on that. And then we're going to add a new recipe. So this is kind of what they call an automation. Now I'm going to follow through the same example of creating a post, just so you can see how this is set up. And to use Zapier, we need to select an anonymous trigger type. The onboarding here isn't great. Like, it's kind of hard to know what actions are logged in ones and which ones are anonymous ones. But you can always just create a recipe, confirm it just while you're testing, just to see what works, right? So I'm going to say create a new post from Zapier. And our trigger is going to be, of course, from Zapier. So that would only show up if you have the Pro version. But we've got the one trigger here to receive data from a Zapier webhook. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And now let's go and set this up at Zapier. It is a little complex if you've never worked with webhooks before. I have a video that I'll link up below again on how webhooks work if you'd like a bit more of an introduction, but I will just show you how to set this up here, right? So this has created a special URL on our site that is going to trigger this workflow, right? So I'm going to copy that and jump back over to Zapier. I'm going to head to that other workflow we made for new YouTube videos to WordPress. I'm going to go ahead and delete this action that we created before. And instead, we're going to use a webhook action. And we're going to do a post here. And the first bit of data we need to put in is the URL. So I'm just pasting that directly from Uncanny Automator. I'm going to change the payload type to JSON, and then we specify the data that we need to send over. And this is the more complex bit. So Normally with Zapier, everything you need is kind of automatically passed from the trigger into the automation, but we actually need to say every bit of information that we want to send over to Uncanny, right? So because we're creating a post in WordPress, we probably want to add a few things here. So we want the title of our video, we're going to want the YouTube URL, and maybe the description. So I'm just adding different bits of data that we are sending over to the site. So, you know, all the different things that you want to put in, you know, maybe you want the thumbnail, that sort of stuff. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as those three, but we actually need to give this a title now. This all has to be one word, so no spaces. So it's just going to be title, URL, and description. And then we need to go and match this up on the other side. So we've got title, URL, and description. We need to tell this what to expect. So we're going to go title, URL, and description. And what kind of information is coming in. In this case, they're all just text, right? I guess for the URL, we could change that to a URL, but these two are just text. So then we're going to click Get Samples. So this kind of works similar to Zapier, right? We're testing the trigger. Now jump back over to Zapier. I'm going to jump down and run that test. Looks like that was successful. So I'm going to jump back over here, and it looks like, there we go. So we got a description for that video, we got some text, and we got the URL. So, yep, we're going to use these fields. Now, just a quick note here. There's basically no security on this URL now, right? So if I set up an automation and I don't delete this recipe, which I will be doing right after I make this video, essentially anyone could come in here and post to that URL with this information, and it's going to create a post on my WordPress site. So basically you just don't want to share that URL. It is pretty unlikely someone is going to guess exactly this and all the bits of data it needs to run. So generally, it's not something to be too worried about. But for now, let's go ahead and actually create an action here. So let's just go ahead and set up an action for now. So we first have to specify what user on your WordPress website this action will run for, because right now this data is just being received from your website. It doesn't know, who we're going to be posting as. So just go with an existing user. And you can use either the email of the login, the user ID, or the username. So let's just say the email of the user you want to post as for this automation. So that would be the URL behind your login essentially. And if the user doesn't exist, we'll do nothing. Just note that for some actions, you cannot select an admin user here. So create a new user in your account that is like an editor or something, and select that rather than your full admin account in WordPress. And then we're going to add an action. Now, this is where you'll see all the different cool stuff you can do with Uncanny. So remember back over here, we had all those different integrations we've got with Uncanny, right? So, if we were using LearnDash again, this is where all those actions would be showing up. So, over here, you would see LearnDash as an option. I do not have LearnDash installed on this website, so that's why it's not there. But you would click that, and then you would have all those actions. So that's why this is insanely powerful, because you cannot do any of that stuff with the Zapier native integration with WordPress. But just for now, I'm going to go ahead and create a post just to make a quick demo for you. And we're going to create a post. Again, we want this to be a draft. We're going to give it a title, and just like Zapier, you use this little option here to pull in data from the trigger. So there's the trigger data, and I don't know why that isn't showing up. It turns out I just hadn't actually saved this, so make sure once you've put in your fields here, make sure you hit that save button there. So that's what I'd done wrong. If you mess it up like I did, you may also have to hit save and then actually reload the page for it to show up. So now we can go down here, and for the title, we can use this option to pull in the title that has come from that trigger. We'll just leave the auto-generated slug for now and go, here's a new video, and drop in that URL. And while we're at it, maybe we'll put the description underneath. All right, so make sure you hit that save button. And just like Zapier with Uncanny, you can continue to create multiple actions. So, maybe we have a special videos page on our website. We could create another special kind of post for that area. For now, I'm just going to leave it really basic just to show you how this works. So once we've set this up, so we've got the trigger there to come from Zapier, receive data in that webhook. We're going to run it on our user here, and we're going to create a post. Once that's done, you've got to switch it over to live here. Now let's go ahead and have a look. So back on my post list, I've deleted that previous post that we created with Zapier. So now I'm actually just going to run a test using this one again. Just going to retest that action. It says it worked. So then I'll jump back over to posts here and refresh. And I'm actually surprised that happened that quickly. That's awesome. So you can see it's created that new post. And it's got the title, the video URL, and the description. So that's pretty awesome. Although it came in as published, I'm pretty sure I set that to not published. So let's have a look at that. Nope, I set it to publish. That's my mistake. I should have set that to draft. Obviously messed something up there. So it's done exactly what I told it to do. So I'm going to delete that because I don't want that live. But yeah, you can see that is how you can use Uncanny to extend the ability of how you can integrate Zapier with WordPress. And I definitely recommend jumping over to that integrations page. Go to csnare.com/uncanny. Have a look at the integrations page here and just have a look at all the plugins it can integrate with. See if there are any cool ideas that you might want to implement on your website, So if you are using any of these plugins, that's a whole bunch of extra automation capability that you get with Zapier and your WordPress site. So yeah, it's a bloody awesome plugin. That's it. I hope this has inspired some awesome ideas for you to automate your WordPress with Zapier. I know there are a lot of things in here, a lot of different ways you can save time. I'd recommend just picking one thing and trying it out. When you are learning to automate, that's kind of the best way to do it. Just try little things and eventually your knowledge will build. Kind of like a snowball where you can just do more and more things with your knowledge as it accumulates. Before you go, just double check the video description below to see if there are any updates to this video or new cool tools that I found, because that's where they go, because unfortunately I can't update the video. And if you would like to learn more cool ways to automate your business and get more productive, hit that red subscribe button below. I've been Jimmy from jimmyrose.me and Content Snare, and I'll see you in the next video.